Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast. Josh and Jill coming at you on a rare Wednesday recording this week. You're listening to
Hump
us on
day.
Thursday, Hump Day indeed. Have a big show for you. Had some NFL news come out since we last recorded. Not as much as we were hoping, but a little bit of tidbit there. Of course, can't go this time of year without talking some sort of Aaron Rodgers and jump into a little bit of March Madness and golf.
He's just never not going to be in the news.
Yeah,
that's just how it's going to be.
That's just how it'll always be. Yep. Before we get into all that, though, Jel, question of the day today. Had the World Baseball Classic wrap up yesterday evening. Japan with a thrilling 3-2 win over the United States. Japan ended up going undefeated in this. Never lost. Had an epic battle. I'll let you get into it in a little bit here. Trout and Shohei Ohtani to end the game there. But I guess, do you think that this is the right time of year to have this tournament? It was going on during March Madness, so you're competing with that. Granted, most of the games were not during the actual ones. It was a little bit later on in the evening. But we had some big injuries come out. You had Mets closer Edwin Diaz go down with what was it? Patella tendon or something?
Yeah, I know it was. That sounds right, and I just know it's 8 to 10 months of recovery is the estimation.
So he's potentially out for the season unless they make a deep playoff run. And then you had Jose Altuve, Astros second baseman, go down as well.
So he's out 8 to 10 weeks, I believe it was.
So a couple of huge injuries there to kick off the season. I mean, is this something? I mean, do you think that this is the right time of year? I mean, this could have happened in spring training as well, too. So, I mean, granted, teams are a little bit more careful with some of these guys in spring training than maybe the World Baseball Classic. But, I mean, is this something, too, that maybe could be done after the season? What do you think on this?
See, ultimately, I don't have a problem with the timing. If it's done right after the World Series, I mean, everybody, or at least most of these players, they would have already been off. At least anybody that plays in the MLB, most of them have been off for a month, at least a couple of weeks. And you can't really, if you're expecting any of these players from these World Series teams, any of the players from those World Series teams to keep playing, like, good luck. That's almost like the Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl rule. Right. So I think it's the fine time. It's a fine time. It's during spring training when everybody is getting ready for the season. Yeah, it sucks for those couple of injuries, but all things considered, I mean, we've seen some of these freak injuries before. I mean, Edwin Diaz, we're not going to, it's not like that's a regular occurring thing in terms of, celebrating and injuring himself.
Perfect.
Not since Martin Gramatica have we seen something like that. So that poor Gramatica, that pretty much ended his career.
Yeah.
On
Automatica, Gramatica.
not so much anymore.
No.
And then the Altuve thing. I mean, he's out the first 2 months of the season. You always see you always see a few of those every spring training where, hey, somebody's going to miss the first couple of months. They strained their X, Y, or Z, and, they're going to miss a little bit of time. I just think you can't put it right after the World Series because you're going to miss out on players that can participate. You're going to have players that have been off for a month. They're not going to want to spend that next month, like, after their 162 game season, gearing themselves up for the World Baseball Classic. Anybody that maybe lost in the championship series, AL or NLCS, like, fuck that. I don't want to go play again in 2 weeks. I'm devastated. Yeah. So, and when else can you really do it? The only other option that I think could be and maybe should be considered at maybe every 3 years, All-Star break, and replace the All-Star break with the World Baseball Classic. And what you could do is just the same thing that they do with the All-Star break, where they rotate cities. And now you'd have to reserve that for only the biggest cities in America. I mean, Yeah, Milwaukee can handle hosting one All-Star weekend. I don't think they can handle hosting a World Baseball Classic. The other thing you'd have to obviously consider with that is, I mean, you'd have to change up the schedule entirely. You might end up having to play 140 games that season or something, or 152 instead of 162, and maybe less in spring training to 3 weeks instead of 4 or something. So there'd be a lot of thought into that. But ultimately, I think this is the right time to do it. It also, you bring up the fact that it's during March Madness. This is bracket season, baby. March Madness bracket, World Baseball Classic bracket. We're going to talk about the Dell match play bracket at the end of this episode.
Sure
we're in bracket season, baby. And I think there's some allure to that as well.
Yeah. No, I ultimately agree with you on it. I think I kind of texted you about this last week and had a different opinion, but the more I thought about it, I think this is the right
definitely did.
I think this is the right time of year to have it as well. From a fan aspect, I look at it, this is the time of year that baseball fans are starting to get excited for the season. And, I get to see some of the best players in the world play a month before the season starts, kind of get your juices flowing, get you excited for the upcoming season. Whereas if you had this in November, you're kind of worn out from baseball.
Out.
162 game season.
Plus,
plus
20
the playoffs.
Plus games in the playoffs.
And it's football season. So you're kind of just in football mode at that point.
That's following the PGA model where, hey, let's do all we can to avoid football as well.
Yep. So I do like the idea of having it maybe as an all-star break. I wonder, though, if you'll run into that issue like you would at the end of the season where some of the star players are like, I've just played 70, 80, 90 games right now to this point. I need this couple weeks off just to kind of recuperate my body and get ready for that playoff push in the second half where you might end up losing out on some of the top talent because of that too.
Well, I might say the opposite, where maybe these players, instead of going and playing in the All-Star game, they're like, this All-Star break doesn't mean as much. Next year, I'll be on the WBC team and I'll go all out for that. So that could be like a kind of a, coin flip deal as well. I guess I didn't even think about that, but good point.
Yeah. So no, ultimately it's something fun, and we're week and a day removed from MLB season kicking off
here, baby.
Next Thursday.
Yeah, the other thing too with that game, if you've been keeping up with anything sports, you would have heard by now that final at bat of the WBC was Shohei striking out Mike Trout, the two best players in the world, on the same team, and they have never made the playoffs together, which is astounding.
So bad.
Shohei is due to be a free agent after this season. What's he worth?
I mean, he's got to be north.
We could be talking about him being worth $275 million as a pitcher and $275 million as a hitter. Is he worth a $500 million contract? When we're talking about one player, just given his production, he's hitting 40 bombs. He's got an ERA under 3, and he's striking people out. His three strikes, at least to Mike Trout, were he hit 100, he hit 102, and the strikeout pitch was a slider in the upper 80s that looks like it didn't break until it was about 2 inches in front of the plate, and then it just darted straight left. Like he's
crazy.
A supreme player on all sides of the ball, and whenever you throw him in the outfield, he's a good outfielder too. It's not just hitting. Like this guy's like a 7-tool player. He's got the 5 tools of a hitter and then the 2
pitching.
The 2 pitching in terms of being a power pitcher and having amazing breaking stuff with control. Like this is the best player we may have ever seen in terms of all around. And given that he can pitch this way too, like, guy's insane. What is he worth? Is he worth a $550, $600+ million contract? If you're talking about he's only 28. You could get him to a 10-year deal and pay him maybe $60 million a year is a lot, but shit, this guy deserves over $50 million a year the way that he's playing right now, considering his dominance on both sides of the, well, you can't say both sides of the ball. I don't know how both sides of the plate.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, I think he is going to be the first player to top that $500 million mark, which seems absolutely insane. But like you said, I mean, he's in the MVP rate. He'd be an MVP Cy Young race for both of them, batting, pitching. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I don't know what the back end of that contract is going to look like as far as production. The Angels have done fairly decent, though, at keeping him fresh. I don't think they've been overusing him by any means, and it helps that there's a universal DH now, so any NL team can go after him. And maybe down the road, too, you focus more on him being a hitter and he transitions over into a closer role, too. If he's still able to keep up that 100-mile-an-hour pitches, high upper 80 slider, you could just move him into a ninth inning role and go from there with it. You're not going to overuse his arm and keep him fresh in the field, too.
Imagine seeing Shohei like 4 days a week, just even if it's just one inning at a time, even better.
Yeah, John Smoltz role, except he can actually hit.
Superman.
No, it's going to be insane, and I can't wait to watch that sweepstakes unfold.
I think it's Dodgers and Yankees, Mets. It feels like. I mean, the Dodgers have already cleared away payroll. They didn't re-sign Trey Turner. There was one other dude. They let Justin Turner go. There was some pitcher that they let go. They dumped the Trevor Bauer contract. So
dump Bellinger.
Oh yeah, your boy. Cubby.
Hey, he homered yesterday.
Nice, against some AA scrub?
Probably.
$17 million. Lucky him. He has not played up to that. But
Right.
1 year deal. Let's jump into some footy ball if you're good to go.
For sure. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, type in Dead Arm Sports into that search bar. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Check out that logo. You can see it. If you go to YouTube, on Gel's screen behind his right shoulder, we monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. Again, make sure you subscribe. Click the bell there.
Ding!
We'll answer those questions live on the air. Otherwise, if you do miss out on our live feed, we can be found on our socials at Dead Arm Sports, at DasJel, that's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC, that's at DASJPEC. Give us a follow, send us your questions. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, and we will swag you up. Yeah, got alluded to it, hate talking about it, but yet again, Gel, an offseason full of Aaron Rodgers drama. We recorded last Tuesday and had mentioned that he was going to be going on Pat McAfee the next day, and essentially started off the conversation saying that he wasn't going to get into his future, but then essentially said, I want to play for the Jets. My time in Green Bay is done. They're working on compensation and arguing over it. So I guess for me, what were your takeaways from that? And then, I mean, the Packers have been rumored to not wanting to jump into any deal right away. They're more than happy to wait for the draft. I mean, have some other news from the Jets we'll get into in a little bit too. But I guess what were your initial thoughts and takeaways from this?
I thought that what he said was honestly all pretty accurate. I mean, and he mentioned in that, and this was a week now from today, again, recording on a Wednesday on a hump day. Hump day. And normally he goes on McAfee on Tuesday. So maybe he just maybe he needed an extra day to get out of that darkness or something.
His eyes needed to adjust.
But I felt like he seemed pretty honest. Now he has obviously been deceitful with the media in the past, but I think him and Pat McAfee, and especially AJ Hawk being on that show, they've got a different relationship than he does with Schefter and obviously with Diana Rossini, given that he trashed both of them in that interview and texted Schefter, I don't know how you got my number, but lose it. Nice try. And then Schefter confirmed that comment with a screenshot from that conversation, which I'm glad that Schefter was being a good sport about that, not being a butthurt, type like Ian Rappaport, who tends to be kind of a douche about this kind of stuff. But not naming names though. Whoops. Anyways, if he wants on the show, he's more than welcome to come on. But no, I mean, I think that everything that he said, as a Packer fan that wants to move off of Rodgers, made me pretty happy. He basically confirmed that it seemed like he pretty much confirmed everything, all the rumors and all the reports that had came out outside of him denying that he had a demand list. It was more, he basically mostly said like, yeah, I want Tunyon, I want Lazard. Of course, the Jets signed Lazard. And I want Mercedes Lewis. He's one of my guys. I want Randall Cobb, but he said that getting those guys weren't it wasn't like a death sentence if the Jets didn't get those players. So that was a relief coming from a Packer fan. And then with the Odell rumor, he's like, yeah, who wouldn't want Odell? Which I don't think any quarterback wouldn't want Odell. It's probably more of like management and right. having to manage his salary, because the Odell reports were that he wanted $20 million, and he tweeted out like, there's no truth to me wanting $20 million a year, but I'm also not going to accept $4 million a year, which that's also very understandable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think everything that came out of that report from Rodgers, it seemed truthful. It seemed like pretty spot on. I'm overall pretty happy about how that went. Ultimately, I don't think I'm going to watch very much Rodgers on McAfee, just because I was bored most of the time listening to that. I mean, he's really good at like just like kind of talking around subjects and taking up a shit ton of time. That was like an hour long, and it could have been done in 20 minutes. Probably like our podcast. But I mean, but ultimately I think I got what I wanted. If it's coming down to compensation, and that's ultimately what the issue is, because it's pretty clear that the Packers, I mean, both publicly have said, yeah, we want to move on. Mark Murphy, the president of the Packers, said we want to move on unless things don't go in our favor, which obviously means they want to move on. The Jets have made it known they want in on Rodgers. Nathaniel Hackett's there and everything. So, and Lazard, like I said, had been signed to that 4-year, $44 million deal. So they're all in. It comes down to compensation. What do you think that compensation ultimately should look like? And what do you think it will look like?
Yeah, I can see why they're arguing over it right now. I mean, it's been rumored that the Packers want multiple first-round picks for him, and it sounds like that's kind of where the hang-up is at. I mean, a player that seemed like a perfect fit to be sent back is Elijah Moore. Had news today that he was traded over to Cleveland, so obviously he's not going to be coming back in a Rodgers trade at all. But I think ultimately, though, it's hard, and I can see why both teams are digging their heels in, because I think the Jets would have no problem meeting the Packers' asking price of sending multiple picks, first-round picks, back to Green Bay, but they need a commitment from Rodgers. If he's only going to commit and he's wishy-washy after year one, you don't want to send multiple first rounds back to Green Bay for a rental player essentially for a year, where if they could get a commitment, yeah, I'll play at least 2 years, maybe 3. We'll talk after that second year. Then sure, we'll send multiple first back over. We're in obviously win now mode trading for an Aaron Rodgers towards the end of his career. But ultimately, I think it's going to end up being one first round pick and then maybe a second, throw in a second, maybe a player, something like that coming back. I think the Packers really don't have any leverage. Rodgers came out and said he's not going back to Green Bay. He's going to wants to play for the Jets. So I think essentially all the leverage is in the Jets. The Jets way here. So the Packers don't have anything really to sit on.
And that's kind of that's exactly what I think here too. If I'm the Jets, and I think the Jets are actually, this is going to feel weird to say, but I think the Jets are being smart about this. kind of awkward to come out of my mouth when saying that. But
are we in a parallel universe?
Something's going on. That pandemic did something right for that squad. They come out of that pandemic and they had a killer draft last year, and now they're playing hardball to get Aaron Rodgers. Like, shit. Well done. I guess they made the most out of that. But yeah, I ultimately kind of think that. So right now the Jets sit with their own first round, which is 13. Like mid-teens,
13, I think
13. And then they now, with that Elijah Moore trade, they hold the 42nd and 43rd overall.
Yep.
So what I kind of think is going to happen is maybe they give up that 13 and then they say, hey, conditionally, depending on either if we have a ton of success next year, we'll give you our 42nd, or if we get a commitment, we'll give you that 42nd or the 43rd pick. If we don't have a ton of success, then it's going to be a 4th. Or if he retires after this, that next pick is going to be like a 5th or a 6th. So I think it's going to be a 1st and then a conditional pick that could be as high as that number 42 pick if they get commitment from Rodgers before the draft, this year's draft, or as low as like a 6th if he were to retire after this season. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I would bet it's going to be a 1st and a conditional, and maybe they throw in a player. Maybe there's a swap of some depth that both teams need so that it kind of turns into a win-win either way. But that'd be my guess as to how this turns out.
Yeah, knowing Rodgers, though, I highly doubt we'll get a commitment before the draft. So that conditional, but maybe it's a 2nd for next year. And if he comes back, it turns into their 1st or something like that, too. Maybe, you could always do something like that, too, for next year.
For sure.
Yep. Mecole Hardman is now a Jet, so another weapon potentially for Aaron Rodgers. If you'd call it a weapon, I mean, he wasn't very good in
I saw
Kansas City.
I saw Schefter tweeted out, man, this guy's like talking shit now. He's out here like Jets agree to it. I don't have the exact tweet, but it was something along the lines of Jets agree to a deal with Mecole Hardman for jet sweeps, etc. Mecole comes back. I'm a lot more than jet sweeps. Schefter's already out here pissing people off.
Shocking. But yeah, so, and like you had mentioned, I touched on too, Elijah Moore and a 3rd round pick go to Cleveland, and Jets in return get that 42nd pick. So
you got to hope that for the Browns' sake, I mean, we're looking at a hell of a talent, but he was a head case in New York. Clearly, I mean, he didn't get along with that organization for some reason. God damn, the Browns are taking on just headaches, just continuing to take on headaches. Deshaun Watson, Elijah Moore, like Amari Cooper, you never really know what you're getting out of him. They're finally moving off of Jadeveon Clowney, but that was an unproductive move to keep him on the roster for 2 years. Like,
does that shock you from the Cleveland Browns organization?
Of course not. It's Jimmy Haslam. It's just like they don't ever learn.
Houston Texans signed former Cowboy Dalton Schultz and former Bill Devin Singletary. Schultz getting a 1-year, $9 million deal. Singletary 1 year, up to $3.75 million, depending on incentives hit. Pretty solid move, I think, from Houston there. Dalton Schultz has been a phenomenal tight end the last couple of years, and it'll be great for whatever rookie quarterback comes in and steps in. Or if you have Davis Mills there, he's great, reliable target. So like that signing. And then what do you see, I guess, just real quick, we don't have to dive into it because I don't think Devin Singletary is a renowned running back, but
he's a number 2 back. But
yeah, is he going to eat into the shares? Yeah,
I don't think too hard, honestly.
No. Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't be, if I'm a Dameon Pierce, for fantasy purposes, if I'm a Dameon Pierce owner or going into next season with a fresh draft, I'm not afraid of Devin Singletary's presence. He never was dynamic in Buffalo. If he was, they would have used him more. I mean, I'm not saying that Singletary's a complete bum, but Dameon Pierce just proved to be a really legit back last year. You'd always rather ride that rookie, and that I think Pierce has bigger upside. Singletary's only signed for, I believe it was a $3 million a year contract.
Yeah, 375.
Yeah, so it's not like they got a lot committed to him. Yeah. That's just barely over Boston Scott's number with Philly.
So bad.
What is that? 3 week in a row, 3 episode in a row. Shout out to Boston Scott and his teeny tiny money that he's making. I am a big fan of that Dalton Schultz deal, especially with, we're assuming you're going to have a rookie quarterback in there. Right now, based on Vegas odds, it's looking like it's going to be Bryce Young. Bryce Young having a really nice tight end to be able to throw the ball to, reliable guy. He finished in over the last 2 or 3 years since Dalton Schultz really took over that Cowboys role. He's finished in the top 5 and amongst tight ends in receptions or it's either receptions or receiving yards and touchdowns. So he's he's a solid tight end. I'm pretty surprised that the Cowboys let him go, but the Cowboys, you think that they have are falling in love with our boy Jake Ferguson a little bit, and maybe they're thinking, hey, let's put him into that number 1 tight end role. I know they went out and got Brandon Cooks, traded for him for a 5th and a 6th, but they still needed a number 2 wideout. Are you thinking Jake Ferguson is going to be something that's worth having in fantasy? Do you see him hopping into the top? Every team needs a starting tight end. You see him popping into that top 12, top 15.
I'll let you know May 1st after the draft that answer. But no, Jake Ferguson, obviously we got a really good look at him from his days at the University of Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez's grandson, but he's a solid receiving tight end. And obviously that has worked really well in Dallas. Dak Prescott likes targeting that tight end position. So if he does go into the start of the season as their starting tight end, they don't end up drafting any big names in the first couple rounds, then yeah, I think I'm in on him as a flyer. I mean, I'm drafting someone else in case it doesn't pan out, but I think he could definitely be productive. We've obviously seen a lot of success from that tight end position throughout the years, whether it was Jason Witten back in the early days there of
much
Dak.
Better tight end than Monday Night Football announcer.
Correct. Blake Jarwin was relevant for a little bit before he had his injuries, and then obviously Dalton Schultz too. So Jake Ferguson could definitely step up and be the next Cowboys tight end that is relevant.
I think it'd be interesting if they replace Dalton Schultz with Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah with that number 26 pick.
Yeah, that could be.
And
Michael
they had
Mayer.
Andy Dalton. So recently, they just love that name.
Yeah, apparently you have to have A. Dalton on the team. Apparently, you'd mentioned Brandon Cooks. Any thoughts there, Joe? I mean, he's on his 31 out of 32 NFL teams so far.
Well, this is the first time that he hasn't been traded for a first rounder. I feel like he went from. I don't even was he drafted by the Saints?
Saints to New England, New England to the Rams, I believe. And then the Rams
to the Texans. I doubt that was for a first, but if Bill O'Brien was still there, it might have been. That guy was willing to throw out just it was like he was throwing out draft picks like it was freaking parade candy. It's like
he knew he wasn't going to be around.
You get a pick.
Then we got news too. Speaking of Cowboys, quick cut Zeke and Tony Pollard's going to be, at least right now, their starting running back heading into the season. But think Bijan and any rumor mill there. I know it's been a hot landing spot for him potentially. Jerry likes his first round running backs and high profile guys. So and
it was
Texas,
by the way, it was a second for Cooks and a fourth.
Okay.
That's not too bad. They got 2.5 years out of him or whatever. Did you mentioned Bijan?
Yeah.
You think he's going to be there at 26?
I don't know.
I think that's the wild card. I mean,
if he is though, I don't know how the Cowboys. I mean,
but then what do
like
you
I
do
said,
with Tony Pollard and his $10.9 million
yeah,
franchise tag? I mean, you can't have a first round running back who's going to be making, I mean, at least, you know, you want to hang on to that guy for, you're going to have to hang on to him for the first, assuming you pick up his 5th-year option. That's 5 years. What do you do with Pollard? And you do just a straight split backfield for year 1 and then let Pollard go and turn the reins over to Bijan? If you're
yeah. Maybe you
Dallas,
trade Pollard. Maybe you tagged him thinking that, well, I don't
tag
know
and
what's
trade
going to
type
be
of deal.
available in the first round, but if he
Who's going
falls,
to
I don't
take
know.
on, who wants Tony Pollard
Yeah,
for 11 million though? I mean, it's one thing when he knows your scheme, but who at this point is running back after free agency is still thinking, oh God, we're still short on running backs?
yeah,
You better have figured that out during this time when there were guys like David Montgomery, Devin Singletary. Again, these are B running backs, but serviceable, very, but like,
no,
especially Montgomery over the last 2 years, very good backs, or a very good back. And I just don't think there's any team coming out of free agency screaming, we need a back, unless it's a team like Buffalo. But I don't think they can even afford a Tony Pollard, given all the contracts they have on the books right now between Diggs, Josh Allen, their 2 safeties, Von Miller. Gabe Davis is going to be due pretty soon, probably for an extension if they want to give him one. So,
yeah. Well, they just got Damian Harris too, stole him over.
Yeah,
from
so
New
they
England,
so perfect. Yeah, exactly. I forgot about that. So I don't
Miles
think they're exactly
Sanders
running
went
back
to
needy.
Carolina too. Just a tidbit there too.
One more time.
Miles Sanders over
Right,
to
yep.
Carolina. So,
Yep.
all right. March Madness was upon us. Always a fantastic weekend. I know I
Did you mention Zeke is out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Crazy March Madness. We always have the hopes of some big upsets going in, and a lot of times are disappointed. But hey, we got Fairleigh Dickinson this year over Purdue. Purdue and Zach Edey going down to the 16 seed, second time in history that this has happened. And yeah, I mean, it just was everything aligned for Fairleigh Dickinson in this one. Purdue just looked atrocious, and Fairleigh Dickinson was awesome, and we're hitting shots and ended up coming away with the huge victory. Ended up losing the next round to Florida Atlantic, but always like to see that 16 seed. Had Princeton advance into the Sweet 16, knocking off my bracket champion Arizona in the first round, and then Mizzou. So 2 solid programs that they had knocked off on their way into a Sweet 16 matchup here against the Creighton Blue Jays. But anything else stand out, Joe? Any fun stories from the weekend at all?
Well, I mean, Princeton getting there into the Sweet 16 as a 15, or Sweet 16 as a 15 seed, that's freaking awesome. Is there, I guess, really, once we got, like, now that we're into the Sweet 16, it's a lot of teams that we kind of assumed would be here. You know, your top seeds of Alabama and Houston, not really a shock. Those were the 2 best teams, I think, during the entirety of the regular season.
Absolutely.
And they've been the top 2 teams this tournament. They've been really relatively dominant. Alabama hasn't had, I mean, a close game whatsoever. So I'm not shocked there. The one that was a little bit of a shock to me, I mean, I had Duke in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And it's not the final score the final score of that Duke Tennessee game, I don't think tells the whole story. I mean, Tennessee was in complete command that entire game, and they are facing Michigan State in this first round. Michigan State's played, I think, above their level and like above how they played in the regular season. So you've got 2 hot teams here. I think Tennessee's wins have been more impressive, just the way that they really, really took care of Duke. Do you see Michigan State having a chance at the upset here and getting themselves into the Elite Eight, where they would presumably face Alabama, assuming Alabama can take care of the Ivy League school Princeton?
Well, you're talking about getting like the Elite Eight matchups, because Michigan State right now is going to be facing Kansas State before they would get to Tennessee. Tennessee's got FAU.
You know what? You're right. I've got my games mixed up here.
Oh, yeah,
well,
no worries.
Great.
But no, Michigan State's a hot team right now. That is going to be an interesting region to take a look at. I mean, Tennessee.
I was jumping.
Okay. Kansas State's been good too. So I think you can pencil Tennessee through, as much as the Florida Atlantic Owls have been a nice story here and helping me out in our bracket draft. Tennessee, I think, is going to end up rolling through here. And then, Michigan State, Kansas State, Tennessee's look good right now. And I did not expect them to go far in this one. Their starting point guard had went down in that SEC tournament. So I think they've got to be the favorite right now to come out of this. I would love to see a Tennessee-Kansas State matchup, though. Kansas State has looked awesome, knocked off Kentucky in a close one this last Sunday. And, that should be fun. Bama, I think, up in that South. I mean, Alabama, the three remaining teams of the South, San Diego State, Creighton, and Princeton. So not the powerhouses
if they don't take care of business here, like –
yeah, they should. They've been rolling too. They haven't really played anything close. And I mean, they haven't played any good competition. Maryland was just kind of a cakewalk there. But I think the division or the region I'm most looking forward to this upcoming weekend has to be the West. Arkansas just knocked off Kansas. Granted, Kansas didn't have Bill Self there. UConn is absolutely rolling right now and looking like they could be trouble and maybe even a Final Four team. And then you've got the Gonzaga UCLA matchup that's just going to be epic and just so much fun to watch. So I am going to be tuned into that one for sure. And it's going to be just unbelievable basketball in those two games in the West.
Yeah, I know that you mentioned UConn. That was the one pick that you made that I mentioned on here that I was pretty damn jealous of. And I said, I think that they could make a Final Four or title game run, and they're playing like it. So good for UConn. I like seeing, some of these storied programs, like not like Duke so much or Kansas, but UConn's had their years where they've been awesome. And it's good to see them back because they went through a ton of shit in terms of like academic violations and recruiting violations, which at this point, recruiting violations are non-existent. So unless I'd assume unless you like threaten a kid, like you better come or else.
Right.
But no, it's good to see them there, and I'm honestly not surprised whatsoever by UConn going down. The other team, or the other number 4 seed that went down, Indiana, went down to Miami. And even though Miami's got that big that hasn't that he's been injured, it was like their number 1 big, and there was some concern going into the tournament. Hey, could they lose to Drake? That almost seemed like one of those 12-5 matchups that was too easy to predict because you knew about the injury history and that Drake tends to get a W or 2 in the in March Madness. Miami rolled. And I think them versus Houston, I mean, I get that Houston's been balling out hard, but I think that's going to be a really, really good matchup this upcoming weekend for that Sweet 16 matchup.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like that you mentioned the Miami Drake matchup because historically we've seen that 5-12 upset every year. It's the most likely upset to happen. And this year we didn't have that 5-12 upset at all. Every single 5 seed, San Diego State, Duke, Miami, and St. Mary's all ended up taking care of business and advancing into the next round. And the only other grouping that we didn't see any upsets with was that 3-14 matchup. Baylor, Kansas State, Gonzaga, and Xavier all advanced. But other than that, 8-9 matchup, there was at least one 9 seed that won. 7-10, there was a 10 seed that won. 6-11, 11 seed won. And we even again saw get upset against a 15 and that 16 against 1. So there's a lot of upsets that happened in that first round and just made it a lot of fun and made a lot of people want to rip up the bracket right away.
I certainly did on Saturday morning. Once I was out on Duke and Kansas, both out, to my Final Four teams. Do you think, okay, really just real quick, I mean, do you think the transfer portal and NIL has a really big deal to is playing a major part in these upsets?
Absolutely.
Because we're seeing now, we're seeing transfers all over the place. Your teams like Kansas, which typically, you know, you're going to have your guys, your core guys there for 2-3 years. Maybe one of your guys that you were relying on to be a core guy there through his junior, senior season, it's like, I'm not getting the playing time I want. I'm dipping out. I'm going to go play for maybe down the road and go play for Kansas State. I don't have any specific example of that, but you get what I'm saying. I think that could be playing a major part in seeing some of these upsets. Now, Fairleigh Dickinson, I don't think anybody's transferring out of Purdue to go play at Fairleigh Dickinson.
No,
but you see my point here, where that transfer portal can weaken some teams and can strengthen some of the lower ranked teams and we're going to probably be seeing that going forward.
Yeah. Well, and I think just like we saw with NCAA football and college football in the fall, it just kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Yeah, you're going to have a few of the elite teams. And again, like you had mentioned, Alabama, Houston have been just solid throughout the entire season so far, and they're still standing right now in the tournament, the only 1 seeds that are doing so. But yeah, I think it just kind of levels it and just makes it more fun. And there's a lot more parity. And with a lot more parity comes a lot more fun March Madness tournament where anything can happen in it. So I like it. And just like I like it with football, it levels the playing field. You start getting in some awesome guys. Like, I mean, 5 years ago before NIL, just talking Wisconsin, we're not getting a CJ Williams coming in. I mean, that's all due to
right, no.
one Luke Fickell coming in, but also, I mean, with NIL, you're seeing that. So it's a good thing, I think, for at least the immediate future.
And we'll see how much this changes once there's actual regulations on this, which I think are going to end up coming down, but we can get into that. That another day. We could go on for days on that.
For days
with what the NCAA's involvement could be, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Who do you have as your Final Four then? A fresh start, Gel. You've got 16 teams that are alive right now. Who are your favorites then for your personal Final Four of the remaining teams?
All right, let me run down this real quick. I've got Alabama over San Diego State, facing off against Princeton over Creighton. I got one more win for the 15 seed. I've got Tennessee over FAU. I've got Michigan State over Kansas State for my Elite Eight matchup. I've got Houston over Miami. I went back and forth on that, but I'm going to have to go with Houston just with the way they played, even though Miami's a really nice team. I got to go with Houston the way that they've been playing. I got Texas over Xavier for that Elite Eight matchup. UConn over Arkansas and Gonzaga over UCLA for that final Elite Eight. I've got Bama over Princeton to get into the Final Four. I've got Tennessee over Michigan State to get into the Final Four. I've got Texas over Houston, and I've got UConn over Gonzaga. So my Final Four teams are Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, UConn.
I like it. Yeah, mine's fairly similar. I have Alabama over San Diego State. I've got Creighton over Princeton, ending Princeton's awesome run. And then Alabama getting into that Final Four. I got Tennessee over FAU, Kansas State over Michigan State, and then Kansas State upsetting Tennessee and getting into that Final Four. Midwest region, I'm going to take Miami over Houston. Miami's been playing some pretty decent ball right now. I like them having a little bit of a rest and going into Houston matchup. Then I have Texas over Xavier, and I don't think it matters who Texas plays. They're playing some awesome basketball right now, and
Texas
they're going
is
to run
freaking
through
nice.
this. Yep. They'll be in the Final Four. I got UConn over Arkansas, Gonzaga over UCLA in a barn burner there. And then I have the man-child Timber advancing into the Final Four, sticking with my original Final Four pick there. So have Alabama.
Do you know when they announced the Naismith Player of the Year?
I think it's after the tournament.
Damn, I just hope it's Timber. That guy deserves one. He's been there for like 8 years. Right. Come on, get him one.
It's my Final Four: Alabama, Kansas State, Texas, and Gonzaga. You tuned in last Thursday. Jill and I did our bracket picks. So we picked one team seeded 1 through 16. So 16 total teams each. And right now have a fantastic matchup going. Jill took the lead after the first round, had 8 points. I had 7 points. And then I came storming back in that second round, picked up 8 points myself, Jill at 6. And right now I have a little bit of an advantage, up 15-14. Jill has 3 teams left in Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. And I have Gonzaga, UConn, Miami, and FAU left. So we'll see if we can pick up any more points.
This is nice.
Yeah.
This is going to end up being pretty even as we get down to it.
Yep. No, absolutely. Right. I feel like I'm probably going to lose 2 teams at least in the next little bit here,
and one of them won't be FAU for sure.
Yeah. We'll see.
I'm happy to have Alabama and Texas. Those are my 1 and 2.
Those teams are hot.
Those two are riding.
Yep.
You got UConn though. I mean that might be the wild card here.
Yeah. Well, and we've got FAU versus Tennessee, so one of us is going to have a team eliminated right then and there. And if Miami can upset Houston and Texas advances, one of our teams will get eliminated there too. So should be a good one.
Let's go.
Speaking of good ones, Valspar Championship, not one of my favorite golf tournaments of the year, but was a fantastic finish. Taylor Moore with his first career victory over Jordan Spieth and Tommy Fleetwood. Picked up his first victory, and thanks to that, he is headed to Augusta in 2 weeks. He is Masters bound thanks to that victory there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you'd like to see that. I mean, obviously, that's on every golfer's bucket list to get into the Masters tournament.
It's on my bucket list. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. Maybe in a video game, Jill. I think they have the Masters back in PGA Tour this year. So.
2K21 or 2K, I guess 23.
Yeah. But any other takeaways from this one before we go and run through our picks?
No, I mean just real quick. We've got a couple golfers that we're going to run into the this upcoming tournament is the Dell match play, and we'll get into our brackets in a second here. But 2 of the players that are in that tournament finished tied for 3rd in Jordan Spieth and Tommy Fleetwood. So they're coming into Dell match play looking hot. Just a quick update on our pick'em. Davis Riley finished -1 after a freaking just dog shit performance on Sunday where he finished 3 over. He looked like he was in good shape to finish with the top 10 or within the top 10 pretty easily, but again, pooped himself. And on Sunday, he called the shit poop. And Josh's pick, Justin Rose, finishing T36 with a +1 finish. So I gained 2 strokes there on Big J on the week.
Jell's at -89. I am at -72. Going to take a little break from that pick'em as we have the Dell match play this week. So you mentioned earlier on the episode, Jell, it is bracket season, and there is a bracket for the Dell Championship.
I love it.
Shocker. So this one takes place at Austin Country Club, par 71, 7,100 yards. And again, it's a match play format. So every golfer is seated into a group, the groups of 4. They play each person in their group once, and whoever has the best record after those 3 matches gets to advance into the bracket from there. And just a awesome tournament. Again, I had mentioned last week, I think this is my favorite tournament outside of the majors of the year. I just like the match play format, and this course is awesome too. It's such a fun course, especially that back 9 to watch on TV. You got the par 5 12 downhill. You got the river and the bridge in the background behind the green. And then the following hole, hole 13, was watching. The pros were just making it look like a par 3 today. It's a 307 yard. At least it was playing 307 today. And they're just throwing darts at the pin with their driver. I mean, Jordan Spieth, I think, knocked it within like 8 feet. And guys are just hitting it onto the green over the water. I mean, it's literally you have to carry a pond 300 yards in order to hit the green on this. So huge risk reward hole. You see some guys hooking it into the water. Just
they're going balls
drop
deep
the club.
and trying to smoke it.
Because it doesn't matter. If you hit it in the water, whoop-de-doo, you may have lost one hole. It's worth the risk to
for
go
match
for
play,
it.
yeah.
For match play. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. If this was normal stroke play, you wouldn't see guys doing that more than likely
all day. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, any other tidbits from you on this? I don't know. Did you grab any favorites for this one? I mean, obviously they're all seeded 1 through
I
64.
didn't, just because I don't know what kind of odds even are out there for something like this. I didn't even look at that, but I do have my bracket in front of me. If we want to run through that, just a quick note to any of you listeners that aren't following us on Twitter. You can find our brackets. We took photos of our brackets and posted them on our page. As Josh mentioned at the beginning of the episode, at Dead Arm Sports is the main page, at DASJPEC, Das JPEC is his personal page. Mine is at Das JEL, Das Gel, where we posted our photos of our brackets on there. So if you want to take a look at those, if you want a photo, go ahead. But let's do this audibly. Audibly. There we go.
There
Audacity.
We go. Yeah. So why don't we run through? Let's start with the top left region, Gel. Why don't you run through your picks and who your final 4 golfer is, and we'll just kind of keep moving down the bracket.
Yeah, so I've got advancing into the Sweet 16, Scotty Scheffler. He's going to be over Tom Kim, Alex Noren, and Davis Riley. I've got Tommy Fleetwood in advancing from the next group. I've got Jason Day in a little bit of an upset over Colin Morikawa in that group. I've got Chris Kirk over in another small upset over Victor Hovland and the rest of that group in the to wrap out or round out that that group of 4. Going on to the next region, I've got Max Homa, who's been just mad hot lately. I've got Taylor Montgomery coming out of a group including Jordan Spieth and Shane Lowry. I've got Seamus Power coming out of a group with Sam Burns and Adam Scott. And I got Patrick Cantlay, the favorite out of his group, advancing into the next group. This is going to be kind of hard to do. I don't know. I don't know if this is easy to follow at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just run through your Sweet 16, then we'll get it down to 8.
All right, let's do that. Sweet 16 is, so yeah, Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, Jason Day, Chris Kirk, Max Homa, Taylor Montgomery, Seamus Power, and Patrick Cantlay. On the other side of the bracket, John Rahm, Sepp Straka, Kurt Kitayama, Will Zalatoris. If you saw some of his play today, that looks like a mistake. Xander Schauffele, Sahith Theegala, and Terrell Hatton, and Rory. That'll round out my top 16, my Sweet 16.
I like it. We have quite a few of the same ones here. I've got Scheffler, Fleetwood, and Day in those first 3 matchups, and then I'm rocking Big Dick Vic to advance out of his grouping. Kevin Kisner, who lost to Big Bird today in his first round matchup. Hideki Matsuyama was wearing the brightest yellow pants I've ever seen in my entire life, but Kisner took him the distance, lost by 1, so we'll see if he can bounce back.
Ended up in the final
last year. He loves match play, so that's why I ended up advancing him out of that first grouping. Next grouping, I got Jordan Spieth, I got Seamus Powers, Patrick Cantlay to round out that side of the bracket. Rahm and Straka over at the top, over there. Tony Finau, Harris English, Tom Hoagie, Sahith Theegala, Terrell Hatton, and Rory McIlroy. So that is our sweet 16. I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the same golfers. So we'll see what happens there. I'll kick off the Elite Eight here. I have Scotty Scheffler beating Tommy Fleetwood, Big Dick Vic knocking off Jason Day. Jordan Spieth has been on a roll, have him knocking off Kevin Kisner, and Seamus Power advancing over Patrick Cantlay. On the other side, I have John Rahm beating Sepp Straka, Tony Finau beating Harris English, Tom Hoagie over Sahith Theegala, and Terrell Hatton over Rory McIlroy, which is looking like a terrible pick because Terrell Hatton got his ass kicked today.
Oh, man. Terrell Hatton and Will Zalatoris. Two guys in my Elite Eight. I'll run this down left to right. Scotty Scheffler advancing over Tommy Fleetwood. Chris Kirk over Jason Day. Max Homa over Taylor Montgomery. I went back and forth on that. I do like what I'm seeing out of Taylor Montgomery this year, but had to go with the hot hand and Homa. How about that for some alliteration? Patrick Cantlay advancing as well in the Elite Eight. I've got John Rahm over Sepp Straka, Will Zally, over Kurt Katsuyama. I've got Theegala moving on over Xander Schauffele, and your boy, Terrell Hatton, coming out of the Elite Eight.
We got the Final Four.
Moving on to the Final Four. Texas's own Scotty Scheffler and Patrick Cantlay facing off on one side of the bracket. John Rahm and Terrell Hatton facing off on the other side. Both those picks look bad.
Yes. I also have Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Terrell Hatton, and the only difference, I do have Jordan Spieth, familiar with this course, Texas boy himself.
Another Texan, yeah.
Playing some phenomenal golf, so have him. In the finals, I have Scotty Scheffler knocking off Jordan Spieth and Terrell Hatton knocking off John Rahm to set up Scheffler versus Hatton, and Scotty Scheffler winning it all.
I've got Patrick Cantlay beating Scheffler, and I've got John Rahm beating Terrell Hatton, with Patrick Cantlay ultimately being the winner. And my third place finisher, Scotty Scheffler over Terrell Hatton.
Nice. I like it. I did not put my third place down, but I have Spieth and Rahm, and take Spieth.
Spieth is your third place. There you go.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
John Rahm looked like shit today.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. Again, this format, first 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, are all these group play matchups. Winners advance to play 36 holes on Saturday, essentially, and 36 on Sunday. So 2 matches each day on Saturday and Sunday. So
badass.
Yes, absolutely fun to watch. Mixed in with, of course, some more Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matchups this weekend. We'll be back with you next week to recap those, but do have a fun episode for you tomorrow. Going to have some NFL tidbits and go through and tier off each NFL team. So we'll let you know the state of your franchise tomorrow on the episode. So tune in. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports, YouTube, Dead Arm Sports, that search bar. Subscribe, click the bell there. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor the chat. Ask us any questions there. If you miss out there, you can ask us questions on our socials. Tweet, Instagram us at Dead Arm Sports, at DosGel, at DosJPEG. We'll be sure to answer your question, or if we like it and think we could have a good convo from it, we will have it on the next podcast and give you a shout out as well. So more incentive to send us in some questions. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot and we will get you some swag. What are those platforms, Joe?
Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on whatever your chosen listening platform is. Send us a screenshot of that written review. Free swag coming your way once you hit us up in the DMs with that screenshot of that written review. Make sure to also find us on YouTube, as previously mentioned. And yeah, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so that you get your notifications. Ding. And one last reminder, you have to find us on Twitter for our picks. It's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to find us, to be able to visually see what we're doing here. Going to be a lot easier to follow our actual picks there. So, yeah, I guess make sure you do that and give us any feedback on Twitter as well. Any comments on any tweets that you send over, we're going to be seeing them. We'll be replying on them as long as they're not too slanderous. And but we're here. We're also here for the shit talking. So find us there and make it a fun time.
Absolutely. Again, appreciate everybody out there tuning in. Make sure you tell someone you know, help us spread the word, get you even more content going. That'll wrap it up. Close her out, Jill.
As Oprah would put it, your bracket's busted. Your bracket's busted. Your bracket's busted. Everybody's bracket is busted.